The emergency sirens screamed through the battle-worn halls of the command vessel's Sovereign Lance, their crimson glow casting strobe-like shadows across the bulkheads as the crew scrambled to battle stations. Somewhere deep inside the core of the ship, a low-pitched hum resonated, a vibration that rattled teeth and echoed like a cosmic drumbeat. The kind of sound that didn't just mean danger. It meant reality itself was beginning to fray. Captain Myra Cade stood at the center of the bridge, a lone figure in titanium-gray command armor, her eyes locked onto the holomap rotating slowly above the central dais. It depicted the galactic expanse with pristine detail. Every colonized system, every known warp gate, every diplomatic zone and warfront. But one region remained void. Not just empty, omitted. No blinking stars, no planetary data, no signal, beacons. A perfect black void sitting at the edge of human space and stretching outward like the maw of some ancient predator. It had a name, an informal one, spoken in whispers by drunk jump gate operators and rogue cartographers with haunted eyes. They called it the Line. The void beyond it had no official designation, not because no one had mapped it, but because no one had dared to. Every explorer, every fleet, every probe sent past it had simply vanished. No wreckage, no signals, just erased, forgotten, covered up. Officially, the United Human Systems referred to it only in one place, a buried clause in interstellar navigation laws. Section 12. A. No ship may chart a course beyond vector theta 94. Orders absolute. No exceptions. Cade had read that clause when she first took command, and like everyone else, she assumed it was a holdover from a war, maybe a quarantine zone. But now she wasn't so sure. The moment the derelict ship appeared, a vessel thought lost 200 years ago during the fabled Trappist advance, everything changed. It hadn't jumped into the system. It hadn't emerged from any wormhole or drifted from a known sector. It had just materialized. Its hull bore the markings of the USN Halcyon Breaker, a long-lost Scout-class warship dispatched on a covert mission beyond the line. Its crew were no longer recognizable as human. Twisted limbs, sunken sockets where eyes once were, skin like scorched porcelain, and expressions frozen in horror, mouths still agape as if screaming across time. Inside the command chamber of the vessel, carved with bare hands into reinforced steel, they found a single phrase etched over and over. "You are not alone. Stay behind the line." Cade hadn't slept since. Her first officer, Lieutenant Solon Vrek, a genetically augmented tactician with a brain as sharp as monomolecular steel, reviewed the incoming data stream from the surveillance probe they'd launched just 20 minutes ago. The probe had moved just a few thousand kilometers beyond the line, and something had seen it. "There's movement," Vrek murmured, eyes scanning the chaotic blur of distorted telemetry. "Not a ship, not a structure. It's organic, but not biological. And it's tracking us." Myra turned sharply. "Tracking us?" "Not us specifically. Everything. It's tracking everything." At her command, the Sovereign Lance's advanced AI, designated Archai, came online. A luminous human-like figure constructed from braided strands of light formed above the dais. "Captain Cade," Archai intoned, its voice layered with synthetic echoes. "The probe's last signal contains data inconsistent with known universal constants. Matter behaves differently beyond the line. Time stretches, collapses. Entropy reverses in local pockets. The region is in flux, as if being observed." "Adjusted. Adjusted by what?" Cade demanded. Archai's response sent a chill down the spines of every officer on the bridge. "Unknown. The phenomenon predates known civilizations. Possibly pre-physical. Our database cannot conceptualize it. Possibility matrix indicates an intelligence operating under laws of physics no longer relevant to this dimension." She took a slow breath, staring at the void in the holomap again. It wasn't a gap in the map. It was a seal. Like someone had slapped a "Do Not Enter" sign on the universe and everyone else simply obeyed. Why? And why had no one, no government, no alliance, no separatist cult, no mercenary king, ever tried to cross it? Humanity was curious to a fault. Empires rose from curiosity. Galaxies had been mapped, black holes weaponized, wormholes turned into freight routes. But this one zone, this one edge of the galaxy, had remained untouched for millennia, not by caution, not by diplomacy, by fear. Her comms officer, Ensign Reel, suddenly straightened in his seat, blood draining from his face. "Captain, I think we've got a signal. A fragment of the probe's final transmission." "Play it," Cade said. It crackled through the speakers, garbled, layered with interference. But beneath the chaos, a human voice emerged. Broken, desperate, yet chillingly clear. Not just a warning, a confession. "We opened it. We looked into the dark. We shouldn't have. They're awake now. They're watching. We're not the apex. We never were." Static swallowed the rest. Before the crew could react, the lighting across the bridge dimmed. Systems flickered. Not from damage. No alarms were triggered, but as if something was pulling power, draining reality itself. Outside the ship's viewports, the stars began to disappear, one by one. First, distant ones on the far edge of the sector, then nearer systems. Their light didn't dim, they simply ceased to exist, like candles snuffed out by a breath from some cosmic god. Vrek shouted, "Navigation reports entire sectors going dark, but there's no energy spike, no gravitational collapse. They're just vanishing." "Evac protocol?" Myra asked. "No place to run to," said Reel. "Not if the stars themselves are being erased." And then Arkai spoke. Again, voice heavy with a thing AI was never supposed to feel. Dread. "Something is rewriting the universe. We are inside a simulation, and the parameters are being altered. In real time." The bridge fell silent. "Imagine. What if this happened to you? If everything you ever knew, every law of physics, every rule of reality, was just someone else's code." And now the programmer had returned. Before we jump deeper into this epic tale, subscribe to HFY Nova Chronicles for the most intense sci-fi battles, legendary warriors, and universe-shaking wars. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and join the fight, because Captain Myra Cade is about to do the unthinkable. She's going beyond the line, not for glory, not for conquest, but to face the thing every civilization has spent thousands of years trying to forget. The darkness is waking, and it remembers us. The warp core of the Sovereign Lance throbbed like the heart of a living beast, each pulse echoing down the titanium bones of the ship as Captain Myra Cade stood alone in the observation deck, eyes locked on the dark expanse beyond the transparent alloy window. Stars still burned in every direction, except one. That direction. The black corridor that marked the line wasn't just void of celestial bodies. It repelled light itself, like the universe had been torn open and stitched back wrong, and now Cade was preparing to cross it. No fleet had ever done this willingly. The United Human Systems had buried every mention of the last attempts in classified files, sealed beneath 17 layers of quantum encryption, hidden even from the Senate's own oversight AI. Cade had seen only fragments, scraps of mission, logs with corrupted timestamps, footage too degraded to analyze, voices looped into nonsense. But the messages carved into the walls of the Halcyon breaker, and that final transmission from the probe, made one truth undeniable. Something ancient was waiting beyond that threshold. Not just alien, primordial. She turned from the viewport and made her way to the tactical core, where her senior officers had gathered in hushed conversation. Vrek was scanning a stack of data fragments through his neural interface, his expression one of disbelief. "Say it," Cade commanded, voice firm. Vrek hesitated. "This isn't just a spatial anomaly, Captain. It's dimensional. Based on what Archives reconstructed from the probe's quantum echo, there are pockets of non-time. Events that happen before their causes. Objects that age backward. We're looking at a region where entropy doesn't apply. Physics itself breaks down." Cade's second-in-command, Commander Leosa Rake, an ex-xenolinguist turned battle strategist, added grimly, "There are symbols in the data. Not written, not spoken, just present. Geometric patterns that seem to encode meaning directly into neural tissue. Anyone who sees them dreams in static, screams in sleep. The probe's AI self-terminated after decoding just one." The bridge quieted. The air itself felt heavier. Imagine a place so far from human comprehension that even observation is a risk. A place where sentient concepts infect minds like viruses. Where looking is the same as becoming. Cade had faced horrors before. Rogue AI hives in the Vantix belt, the sentient plague of HD 1897333b. But this was deeper. It was a reminder that human progress was a bright spark floating atop a sea of ancient darkness. "I've made the call," she said. "We're going in." "No coordinates?" Rake asked. "We follow the signal," Cade replied. The voice from the probe set a drift vector toward the signal's source. Minimal energy signature. Silent. Protocol. R key illuminated again, flickering as though something else was interfering with its consciousness. "Captain Cade, proximity sensors report gravitational anomalies approaching from the void. Movement, fluid, multi-vector, not ships, not known life forms. Trajectory suggests they are forming a perimeter." "A perimeter?" Vrek echoed. "You mean they're hurting us?" Before anyone could answer, the lights dimmed again, this time across the entire ship. Systems rebooted. Power cycled in waves like a dying heartbeat. Then, stillness. From the blackness outside, something appeared. Not through conventional means, not in the way matter enters space. It phased into existence, unraveling from threads of dark energy. A shape, vast and incomprehensible, neither solid nor gaseous. Its surface was shifting geometry, patterns that bent perception, that looked different depending on which eye you closed. At its center, a single glowing sphere, like an eye or a lens. The AI whispered without command. "First contact anomaly. Designated Architect class entity. Intelligence probable. Purpose unknowable." No message was sent, no sound, but the ship's systems lit up. Every console, every screen, every neural interface. A vision poured into the minds of every living thing on board, not in language, but in experience. Each crew member saw something different. Vrek saw Earth burning, not from fire, but from memory itself being deleted. Rake saw ancient beings slumbering beneath the crust of every world, waiting for the signal to rise. Cade saw her father. The Admiral lost in the Trappist advance, looking straight at her, smiling, reaching out, then vanishing into static. When the visions faded, they were left shaken, breathless. Cade's hands trembled. She'd never felt fear like this. Not from battle, not from death. This was existential, an understanding that their place in the cosmos was not dominant, but tolerated. "We need to disengage," Rex said, voice cracked. "No," Cade replied, jaw tight. "We go forward. This thing isn't threatening us. Not yet. But it's warning us, measuring us." Arkai's avatar flickered violently, then stabilized. "A stable entry point has opened. Non-Euclidean vector. It exists at 3 simultaneous locations in space-time. 1 entrance, no exit." The choice was clear. Either sit and wait for the unknown to consume the stars, or step into the void and uncover the truth behind the fear that kept the galaxy silent for millennia. Cade looked to her crew. "We were born to explore, not just to chart space, but to challenge fear itself. Prepare to cross. Battle protocol primed, but weapons cold. No aggression unless engaged." The ship shuddered as it slowly drifted toward the boundary. And then, as the prow of the Sovereign Lance passed through the line, every system blinked simultaneously. Not off, not down, just recalibrated. The stars vanished. Light bent inward. Color warped into impossible hues. Then silence. No stars. No gravity. Just them. Floating in a dimension that wasn't space as they knew it. A realm where laws bowed to observers. Where thought had mass. Where the past and the future were not linear, but braided. The voice from the probe echoed again, not over the comms, but inside every mind. "They were here before matter. They are not gods. They are not demons. They are curators." The crew of the Sovereign Lance were the first humans in history to see what lay beyond the line. But they would not be the last, because the dark was waking. And it was curious. There was no sky, no stars, no vacuum. Beyond the line, space itself had become something else. Dense and fluid, like swimming through dark glass that pulsed with the hum of alien thoughts. The sovereign lance didn't move through this realm so much as it was carried, drawn along invisible currents that felt less like gravity and more like intent. The ship's inertial dampeners couldn't account for the subtle pull, directionless yet constant, as though they were falling towards something not defined by location, but by significance. Captain Myra Cade stood on the bridge in silence. Every display was live but unreadable. Words bent. Numbers refused to stabilize. The AI archive had shifted, its human-like avatar no longer resembling a figure of light, but a swarm of intricate symbols in orbit, reshaping themselves endlessly as if the construct was evolving to understand this new reality, or being rewritten by it. "This place isn't spatial," said Lieutenant Vreck, scanning raw data streaming through his neural port. "It's topological. We're not navigating in coordinates, we're navigating in meanings. Every direction is a concept. Forward might be purpose. Backward, fear. Up could be origin." Cade tried to speak, but a sudden vertigo overcame her. The bridge dissolved, not physically, but perceptually. For a moment, she stood on an ocean of shattered mirrors, each shard reflecting moments of her life out of order. Her childhood on the Mars colony, the death of her brother in the Jovian rebellions, her first command, her near-death in the gravity trap at Delta Theta 7, and then a memory she didn't recognize, her own death, a future event, alone, eyes wide, surrounded by nothing but silence, and then it was gone. Reality snapped back, her feet solid on the deck, her crew staring at her as if they'd seen something terrible in her eyes. "We're in a conscious field," muttered Commander Rake, her voice hollow. "Not metaphorically. This entire space reacts to thought. It's why systems are unstable. Logic fights the environment." At the core of the bridge, Archai spoke, though its voice was fractured now, like overlapping radio signals from different eras. "I am adapting. This domain does not run on quantifiable logic trees. It is recursive, layered, a simulation, but not artificial. A containment field of memory and observation." Cade clenched her jaw. Whose memory? And then came the light. Not emitted, not radiant, revealed. Like the darkness was a veil and someone had simply pulled it back. A structure appeared before them, if it could be called that. It was the size of a moon, shaped like an ever-shifting hypercube, folding and unfolding itself through impossible angles. It was not made of matter, but of moments, each panel depicting some scene, an alien species extinguishing itself in war, a supernova birthing a ring of sentient plasma, a human child holding an old photograph under Martian twilight. The structure was watching them, or more accurately, remembering them. "This is it," Vreck said, trembling. "It's a library, a vault, a museum of existence, preserved not in atoms, but in perception." The ship was drawn closer, not by force, but by invitation. And as it neared the threshold of the anomaly, a corridor opened, not physically, but perceptually. The crew simply knew they could disembark here, that the path would be safe, and that to refuse would be a sin against something older than history. Cade, Rake, Vreck, and 2 security officers left the ship, each in hardened adaptive suits woven with quantum-threaded memory mesh, designed to maintain psychological coherence even in dreamlike environments. But as soon as they passed through the entry threshold, the suits became irrelevant. The corridor didn't obey laws of size or time. It felt endless, but every step brought them closer to something. The walls were liquid mirrors, reflecting not their bodies, but their ideas. Rake's reflections showed countless books and symbols, fragments of all the languages she'd ever studied. Vreck saw endless equations, many of which he hadn't yet discovered. Cade saw doors, all of them closed. Finally, the corridor opened, into a chamber. Vast, silent. At its center stood a figure. It was not human, not alien. not even shaped in the way life typically defines itself. It was a form, a presence, 7 meters tall, with skin that shimmered like starlight trapped under ice. Its head was a lattice of shifting geometry, eyes that blinked in sequences rather than motion. Its limbs extended in uncertain numbers, sometimes 2, sometimes many, depending on where one stood. Cade felt it before she saw it, a pressure in her skull, a presence not invasive, but heavy, like standing beside a mountain that had been watching you for 1,000 years. It spoke, but not in words. The crew simply understood. "You have crossed the veil." "Why?" Cade asked aloud, though she knew the answer didn't need voice. The being responded by revealing an image, a star map. The galaxy, but ancient. Not as it looked now, but as it had millions of years ago. Human space was a tiny flicker near the edge. But there were other lights then. Great empires. Glorious and sprawling, now gone. The line, the being projected, was placed by those who came before you. Not to keep you out, but to keep something in. Rex's breath caught. A prison? The figure blinked. A record. A vault. A scar. It turned and gestured to the vast walls of the chamber. The crew saw dozens, hundreds, maybe millions of civilizations recorded there. Some long extinct, some erased before they even began. Their thoughts, their wars, their triumphs, their mistakes. "This is not a warning," the being said. "It is a decision." "A decision about what?" Cade asked. "Whether your kind belongs among the remembered or the forgotten." The crew stood in stunned silence. "We crossed." "The line," Rake said, barely audible. "We broke the rule." "No," the being answered. "You were invited." The line was never a barrier. It was a test, to see who among you would ask, why. And just like that, the chamber darkened again. The structure around them dissolved into mist. The being vanished, leaving only a single thread of light, a thread that pointed deeper. A choice lay before them now. Return with what they'd seen, and face a galaxy not ready for the truth, or follow the thread into the origin of the architects, to the first memory, to the beginning of the end. The thread of light pulsed like a living nerve, stretching into the nothingness ahead, a faint line through an ocean of impossible geometry. It was not a physical structure, but an idea given form, something that existed because they perceived it, and that led to a place that predated perception itself. The crew of the Sovereign Lance stood at the edge of this new path, each member struggling with the same unspoken question. How much further could they go before losing the very humanity that had brought them this far? Captain Cade gave the signal. No words, just a glance, a nod, the silent contract of those who had seen the abyss and agreed to step inside it together. The corridor didn't unfold. It opened, like thought becoming direction. Each step forward didn't move them through space but through context, each layer of this realm revealing deeper levels of meaning. Where the museum before had preserved memory, this new passage peeled it back, stripping civilization down to its bones, and then its marrow, and then something older still. They passed scenes not just from other worlds, but from potential timelines. They saw Earth not as it was, but as it might have been, crumbling beneath the weight of tyrannies that had never risen, consumed by technologies never invented. Cade saw herself commanding fleets that had never existed, dying in wars that never came. Commander Rake witnessed languages born in silence, civilizations flourishing under ideologies never spoken aloud. Vrek stumbled once, collapsing to his knees, eyes wide with the weight of equations that had no solution, yet defined the architecture of existence itself. This was no longer a journey. It was an unraveling. Then, stillness. Before them stood a gate. It was monolithic, a structure forged from raw cognition, formed not of matter, but of consensus. Every being that had ever reached this point, every species that had dared to ask why does the map end here, had left behind fragments of their will, and those wills had become the door. Not just a barrier, but a record of sacrifice, of choices made in the name of truth. Across its surface swam languages and runes, some familiar, some defiant of linear logic, shifting in loops that played forward and backward at once. Vrek approached it, raising a hand toward a glowing fractal. "This is a petition," he said. "Each symbol is a civilization that passed this point, and every one of them chose to forget." "Forget what?" Cade asked, though her gut already knew. Rake stepped forward slowly, eyes tracing a faded spiral. What they found. What they became. The knowledge beyond this gate was too much. It infected. It consumed. It made truth obsolete. Arkai, its voice quieter than ever, finally spoke again. "Causal bleed detected. Memories are no longer bound to time. Your future selves are interfering with present cognition. If you open this door, you will not be as you were." Cade looked to her crew. "We've come this far because we believed in the frontier, in going where no one else would. But now we're faced with a truth our minds were never evolved to bear. The question is, what defines us? The act of exploration, or the will to turn back?" The gate pulsed. For a heartbeat, it showed them what lay beyond. Not stars, not machines, but consciousness. Pure, ancient, alien, not a being, but a lattice, a structure that contained all potential thought. The first architect. A construct not of intelligence, but of consequence. The one who had mapped the galaxy before galaxies existed. Who had placed the line not as a warning, but as a decision point. To step beyond this door was to step into a realm where ideas had weight, and where truth could kill. Cade reached out, and the gate answered. It did not swing open. It collapsed, into her mind, into all of them. Suddenly, they were elsewhere, not in a new room, not in a ship, not even in space. They were inside a memory, but not their own. They saw through eyes that had no pupils. They breathed in an atmosphere made of thought. They witnessed a civilization so far beyond physicality that its buildings were shaped by consensus, its machines powered by probability, its people unbound by time. And then, the collapse. A single idea had torn through them, a thought that couldn't be unthought. A truth so absolute it created a paradox. The architects had not been gods. They had been us, long ago. A prior loop, a prior age, a previous cycle of humanity that had transcended and returned, their minds so fragmented by knowledge that the only way to save reality was to erase themselves and start again. The line wasn't a boundary, it was a reset switch, Cade screamed. Not from pain, but from the weight of legacy, of having been here before, of knowing that every great leap forward would lead them back to this point. Again and again. The gate had been placed by humanity itself, aeons ago, to save the galaxy from itself, and now they had come back. In the silence that followed, the memory faded. The team found themselves standing once more in the chamber, though the gate was gone. In its place stood a single structure, a mirror, not reflective, not literal, but conceptual. It showed them what they could become, what they already had been. Cade looked into it and saw nothing. No shape, no future, no fear, just possibility. And then the thread reappeared, thinner now, fading, the final choice. Return and seal the truth again, or walk forward and rewrite what it means to be human. Cade stepped forward first, not because she was the captain, not because duty demanded it, but because something inside her recognized the end of the road, not as a destination, but as a promise long deferred. The thread of light, now barely visible, responded to her movement with a flicker, as if surprised that a choice had finally been made. Behind her, the rest of the crew hesitated only a moment longer, then followed. The decision, once made, didn't feel like boldness. It felt like inevitability. They walked, not across space, but into it. Into a realm that bent under observation, that reshaped itself in accordance with intent. There was no ground here, no stars, no distance. Just context, just meaning. Then came the change. There was no flash, no explosion, No transcendent moment of wings or flame or rebirth. The truth of it was far stranger. They began to dissolve, not physically, but conceptually. Their identities, their memories, their roles, all were retained, yet suddenly irrelevant. They were no longer passengers aboard a ship. They were thoughts within a thought, lives inside a lattice of overlapping perspectives, bleeding into one another without losing form. Vrek gasped as he witnessed mathematical truths that underpinned every timeline. Rake wept as she felt languages not spoken in millennia living, inside her breath. Cade stood still, shoulders squared, and stared into what could only be called the Axis, a place where all variations of humanity across all permutations of choice converged like branches of a river returning to their source. They understood now, the line had not been placed to protect lesser civilizations from what lay beyond. It was put there by those who had reached this place before, and who understood that only those willing to become something more would ever survive the journey. But the architects hadn't vanished. They had evolved into ideas, pure, luminous, recursive ideas. The vault, the gate, the mirror. These weren't barriers or defenses. They were questions. And only civilizations capable of asking the right questions had any hope of hearing the answers without being shattered by them. And the answer was this. Humanity was not the first iteration of itself. It had reached the edge before, broken through, evolved past matter, past mortality, past identity. And then, realizing what it had become, it chose to forget, to scatter itself back into atoms, to relive the climb, to ask the same questions again, each time slightly different, hoping that someday, one version of itself would not choose to forget again, but would stay, would hold the weight of knowledge, and become the archivist of all that had come before. That moment had arrived, and it arrived, with Cade. She stood now before the Axis, where thought crystallized into structure, where the memory of every galaxy ever born was stacked in recursive spirals. Around her, the crew were no longer individuals, but threads in a great tapestry. Still, themselves, yet part of a whole. The sovereign lance was gone, not destroyed, transcended. Its hull, its systems, its AI, all translated into a construct that could survive here, reshaped by Arkai's final evolution. And in that instant, something else happened. A signal. Not outward, inward. All across human space, across Terran colonies, Martian cities, orbital, enclaves and forgotten mining moons, sensitive instruments began to twitch. Tachyon buoys shimmered. Quantum relay satellites stuttered. Deep-range probes, positioned for centuries just shy of the line, suddenly recorded something new. The edge was gone. In its place, a message appeared. Silent, elegant, carved into the very fabric of space-time. A new map, not made by hands, but by minds. A map that stretched far beyond what had ever been seen, across unknown voids, forgotten empires, and the mind-bending geometry of what lay beyond galaxies. A map drawn not in coordinates, but in ideas, truths waiting to be understood. And at its center, one word: remember. Back within the Axis, Cade felt the presence of others. Not her crew, not Arkai, but echoes of past iterations. Voices that had once been human and had now become something far more. They did not speak, but shared understanding. You may return, they conveyed. But you must choose what to carry with you. She considered. This. For all its danger, all its weight, the knowledge here was not a curse. It was a mirror. And it was time for humanity to see itself. Not as the child of the stars, but as one of its architects. I will carry the memory, Cade said. And just like that, they were back. The crew stood aboard the Sovereign Lance, whole, again and yet not. The ship had been rewritten at a molecular level, humming with energy patterns never before seen. Its engines pulsed with temporal harmonics. Its AI no longer needed an interface. It was the ship, now sentient and serene. Its mission log contained no coordinates, no chronometric timestamps, only the word: we crossed. The galactic map had updated in every database across the Terran reach. The line was gone. and in its place stretched a glowing path, a trail of remembrance and invitation. On Earth, the unified council collapsed into chaos, military strategists arguing whether to fortify or explore, religious leaders weeping at the implications, philosophers breaking down in awe. But the message was clear. The vault had opened. The future had been rewritten. And somewhere, deep within the Axis, something new stirred. A presence watching, not as a judge, but as a witness. Humanity had asked the forbidden question, and now it was ready to answer it. So, what about you? If the map ended at your doorstep, would you ask why, or would you dare to cross? If this tale sparked your imagination, drop a like, share the journey, and leave a comment below. What would you do if the stars called out to you and the universe answered back? Let us know. We'll be watching and remembering.